are available for anyone over 6 months of age, while boosters are available for anyone over the age of 5. This message brought to you by the Native American Community Clinic. Find a vaccination site by calling 651-304-9986 or visit vaccineconnector.mn.gov.
When we heal from our traumas,
when we face our fears,
let go of our addictions,
when we relearn our values,
when we live our teachings,
respecting our elders,
cherishing and honoring our children,
when we honor and take care of our spirit,
there will be no room left for sexual violence.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
J&S Bean Factory is a Native-owned, community-supported, cozy, artsy coffee shop which offers roasted on-site beans, live music, and baked goods. Relax in the beautiful outside patio. City Pages writes, voted top 10 coffee shops. Tucked into a quiet corner of St. Paul's Highland Park neighborhood, this coffee shop roasts beans on-site from the best coffee-growing countries in the world. Located at 1518 Randolph Avenue, St. Paul. The good stuff.
Hey, Olgama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Showers and storms tonight with a low of 62, then partly sunny on Saturday with a high of 73. The Great Wall has been serving up authentic Peking and Sichuan favorites for over 40 years. The Great Wall is located on France Avenue along the Minneapolis-Edina City line. Check out their menu at greatwallrestaurant.us.
Portions of Native Roots Radio may be pre-recorded.
It's a good day to be indigenous. Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Cody Cup, hit me cut again.
Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
I am awake.
Welcome to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanja Hade. Hey, Kadagi, to all my friends and relatives in four directions. You are listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot. We discuss local and national Native news and events, and as you know, Wendy, Native issues are human issues, and human issues are Native issues.
This portion of the show is brought to you by Native Roots Trading Post. We will be at the Minnesota State Fair starting this Thursday, August 25th through Monday, September 5th.
Totally excited.
We're excited, and we support Native American artists.
Hey, we have a special show today, and we're not going to be doing the news, but we are talking about news, and we won't be doing the sacred animal portion of our show either, Wendy, sorry. But you know, we're talking about something really important here. And Wendy, you always end the show with free Leonard Peltier, and we want to really get deep in that. And there's going to be a walk for justice coming up, and we have a couple guests on here along with Rachel Thunder. And I really want Rachel to jump in here if she can and explain, one, who Leonard Peltier is, because we're on over 40 progressive radio stations across the country. And I want Rachel, if she can, to give a quick synopsis of who Leonard Peltier is and why we're here talking about this walk for justice. Welcome, Rachel.
Mm-hmm. Hello, and thank you to each of you and to all of you collectively who are listening. I'm Plains Cree, Nihio Walk. I also sit on the American Indian Movement Grand Governing Council as the chapter director for Indiana and Kentucky, and I'm also one of the leads organizing the Leonard Peltier's Walk to Justice that's happening this fall. And I also want to thank our guests for being here, Kathy and Kevin, and I want to give them time to talk here in a little bit. But, you know, Robert, just to kind of summarize the answer to your question, Leonard Peltier, Elder Leonard Peltier, is the longest held Native American political prisoner. He has been held unjustly by the United States government for the past 46 years. And, really for those listeners who are listening, because I know a lot of you already know this story, and how it affects all of us as American Indian people, and not only as American Indian people, but as human beings, because this is a fight for justice, for human rights, not just for American Indian rights, but for our rights as human beings and our rights to a fair and just justice system. So just to provide a little context and a little history, and, feel free, Kevin or Kathy, to jump in at any time. In 1973, the Wounded Knee occupation marked the beginning of a 3-year period called the Reign of Terror on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And it was called the Reign of Terror for a reason. The corrupt tribal chairman, Dick Wilson, and the Guardians of the Oglala Nation, or the Goon Squad, were attacking and assaulting and murdering the traditional people of the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation at the time. And the traditional people called the American Indian movement in to help protect their people, to protect their families, to protect their women, to protect their children, to protect their elders. And answering that call were several AIM members, including Leonard Peltier. And so you have to remember, at this time, during the Reign of Terror, there were a lot of assaults and murders happening. There's over 60 unsolved murders during that time. And there was a very heightened sense of fear on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And you have to remember as well that this is sovereign land. So this is sovereign land separate from the United States government. And so what you had at that time was the Federal Bureau of Investigations, or the FBI, were helping and assisting the goons and the corrupt tribal council at the time with information on the traditional people and American Indian movement members. They were also supplying them with weapons and ammunition at the time. So on June 26, 1975, 2 FBI agents came into what's known as the Jumping Bull Camp, which was a residence owned by the traditional Jumping Bull family on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And these 2 federal agents came in an unmarked car in civilian clothes during this time when everybody was scared, and rightfully so, given the context of all of the violence that had been happening over those years. And a gunfight broke out. And at the end of this shootout, in the crossfire, these 2 FBI agents were killed, and also 1 Native American. His name is Joe Stuntz, whose death has never been investigated, and no one has ever been charged with his murder. So at the end of this shootout, the American Indian movement members that were there present, a lot of them fled, and 3 men were eventually arrested. Bob Robidoux, Darrell Butler, and Leonard Peltier. Bob Robidoux and Darrell Butler were both tried and acquitted on the grounds of self-defense at the time, due to the context of the Reign of Terror that was happening at the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And then Leonard Peltier was later arrested in Canada, extradited to the United States, had a separate trial where there's proven evidence tampering, coerced testimonies from witnesses, and they also denied providing evidence to the Reign of Terror at the time, and pretty much eliminating the factor of self-defense, which Bob Robidoux and Dino Butler were both acquitted on. So fast forward to 46 years later, Leonard Peltier is still in prison for a crime that he did not commit. And the reality of it is that they just wanted any Indian to pay. They didn't care who it was. And, Kevin, feel free to jump in at this time to provide some of the more legal aspects that you're so good on, and introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, thanks. Rachel is so good at that. It's one of the interesting things about this case is that context matters. And so I had been a federal judge. Was appointed by President Obama, and I took the federal bench in Nashville, Tennessee. Really had not much familiarity with Leonard's case, or really that history. When those things were taking place, I was born in 1963, so I'm 10, 11, 12 years old when the shootout at Pine Ridge happens. The summer of 1975, I'm playing baseball. I am so far removed from what's happening in Indian country, and it's not something that history is not something that was taught in school, and so I have no preconceived notion of any of this. But in 2017, I stepped down from the federal bench and start talking about criminal justice issues. Part of what led me to step down was that I had sentenced 3 young men to life in prison for nonviolent drug offenses. They were mandatory sentences, and I found that so offensive. I stepped down and I started talking about criminal justice issues, and actually started working on a clemency petition for one of the young men that I had sentenced. And I work on his case, reviewing my own trial transcript to see if I had made any constitutional violations that were worthy of overturning the conviction. So when the news comes out and Kim Kardashian gets involved in that case, I suddenly pop up in the news as someone working on these issues, and someone sends me the Leonard Peltier file. And that's really this objective look as a former federal judge and a lawyer for 20 some odd years. I then take a look at this case, and what happens and the constitutional violations leap out at me. And that's what draws me into this case. Though what happened was really easy for me to understand, and we can go through that. The why it happened, I am still working on, because that is hundreds of years worth of history.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, really appreciate this. Hey, we're going to be right back. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and we're talking about Leonard Peltier today.
Stay with us.
Unwanted sexting or photos, inappropriate jokes, even tickling or wrestling can feel like a violation. Catcalling, cornering, or groping, getting them drunk or high for sex, recording sexual acts without permission, hurting someone because of their sexual orientation, raping a family member, a child, a date, a friend, a stranger, purchasing a human being for sex. You make the choice every single time. Sexual violence is many things. Make a choice. Do not do it.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
The Division of Indian Work is helping Native children with a back-to-school event. The Strong Community Resource Fair will take place Thursday, August 25th from 11 until 3 p.m. in the DIW parking lot at 1001 East Lake Street in Minneapolis. There will be backpacks, food, and school supplies, and a prayer and honor song at 11:30. Plus $50 of COVID vaccine incentives will be available. Again, that's Thursday, August 25th from 11 until 3 p.m. at 1001 East Lake Street in Minneapolis. Learn more by calling 612-369-9770.
Hey, Olgama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
The Senior Linkage Line is a free statewide service of the Minnesota Board on Aging in partnership with Trellis. I have volunteered with seniors nearly 15 years, working alongside their compassionate team. I am honored to partner with Trellis as we help our elders find housing, compare costs of Medicare prescriptions, and learn how to avoid fraud and scams targeting seniors. We help our elders optimize well-being as they age, and we can help you too. Reach out today at trellisconnects.org.
This is Winona LaDuke of Honor the Earth, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio. I'm Awake.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is brought to you by MN350, a grassroots organization fighting for climate justice.
Well, we have an all-star cast here with we're talking about Leonard Peltier, and we're also talking about the Walk for Justice for Leonard coming up. We have Kevin Sharp, that was speaking just a moment ago, and we really want to give you time. I just want to do one thing, real quick thing, Wendy, is we weren't on yesterday, you and I, but we just want to throw out a shout out to Winona LaDuke. It was her birthday yesterday. So Winona. Hey, Kevin, let's go back to where you were talking. That was very interesting on how you got involved.
Well, so right, thanks. I ended up getting a package in the mail that was the trial transcript, court opinions, newspaper articles, photographs, and I just got sucked into this thing. I just sat down and started reading it, and next thing I know, my day is gone because I'm in this case wondering how in the world it got to this point, because it's clear and there's really no dispute about this. The courts certainly agree. The FBI may dispute some of it, but not all of it. That witnesses were intimidated, that perjury was committed, that exculpatory evidence, that is, that evidence that tends to show that a criminal defendant did not commit a crime, that's exculpatory. Inculpatory evidence is the evidence that shows they did it. But the government has an obligation, if there's exculpatory evidence, to provide that evidence to the defendant so he can or she can put on a defense. No question, exculpatory evidence, in fact, a ballistics test that showed it was not Leonard's weapon that killed these agents, that was withheld and wasn't found and just turned over by the FBI until years and years later. So Rachel mentioned the extradition from Canada. That was done based on perjured testimony. A woman named Myrtle Poorbear was forced into signing an affidavit that said she was Leonard's girlfriend and saw him do it. That there's nothing in that affidavit that's true. She later said that she was coerced and threatened into signing it. The three boys who testified against Bob, Dino, and Leonard all were coerced into their testimony that they saw something that they did not see. And so all of these constitutional violations were just right there. And for someone like me who'd spent a lifetime, at least an adult lifetime, supporting and defending the Constitution and taken that oath 3 times, I'm looking at this and I'm shocked at that we're even still here in 2018, 2019, still talking about this. And that's what brought me into this case. And that's why I contacted the person who sent me the material and said, let's get in touch with Leonard. I'm taking this case on pro bono. This needs to be resolved. It was the rest of that I'm still internalizing and learning about the why. And the why, I learned that from, all of the people who were there and all of the people who have lived this, including Kathy, who's got such a unique take on not only what happened, but the effect that it's had on the families, the friends and families.
Well, what do you think, Rachel? Unmute your mic, and why don't you introduce Kathy real quick, please?
Yes, of course. It's an honor to have Kathy here with us, and I would like to ask her to introduce herself in her way and how she would like to be presented. So thank you, Kathy, for being here. Go ahead when you're ready.
Yeah, Kathy Denhasbat Peltier Oya my ambigation Leonard Peltier. Nake the next do Ogala Kota do Terramount no Jibwe. Greetings, thank you for introducing me. I am the youngest daughter of Leonard Peltier, and my mom is Ann Begay. I am from the Navajo tribe and also Ogala Kota and Terramount no Jibwe. My story is I really don't know who my dad is. I wasn't even born when the shootout took place. I was born November 2nd, 1975. So I grew up knowing who my dad, kind of knowing who my dad is by going to the Leavenworth Penitentiary. And at that time, there was only 48 hours a month that he was granted to see. And so we had to share our time with the lawyers and other family members. So we really didn't get to know our dad, but what we did was get to know him through the books, the movies, about about what happened on June 26, 1975. Is that Rachel?
Yeah, wow, Rachel, that's unbelievable. It's super sad to hear that, Rachel, and Kathy. Thank you so much for coming on. There are so many books out there. There's the one that I'm thinking of is the Spirit of Crazy Horse, which is the FBI report, and also what happened in Ogala, that documentary produced by Robert Redford. Rachel, talk to me. What else? Let's talk a little about maybe about the walk, or where do you want to take this?
Well, first I want to say thank you to Kathy for sharing, those pieces with us. And, it's hard to put into words how much Leonard has sacrificed. His book, My Life is My Sundance, he's given 46 years of flesh for his people in this battle, in this fight that we've been in since the beginning of colonization over 530 years ago. And then people forget, about his family. And you can hear it when Kathy speaks. Not only has he been robbed of 46 years of life, his children have been robbed of that time with their dad. He has grandchildren and great-grandchildren that he's never met. He's 77 years old. He's about to be 78 years old. He has type 2 diabetes and an abdominal aortic aneurysm that's fatal if it ruptures. He had a stroke where he lost 80% of vision in one of his eyes. So, what we're asking is something that should have been done a long time ago, is to free Leonard Peltier. And this walk, we've been planning it for almost 2 years now. And we didn't just wake up one day and say, oh, AIM's going to walk for Leonard. What really happened was, there were those of us who were having dreams. And I can't speak for the dreams that others were having, but in the dreams that I was having, I was always in Leonard's prison cell with him. And he would be sitting on his bed with his face in his hands, and he wouldn't be saying anything. And I would always say to him, your people are coming to get you. We're coming to get you. We haven't forgotten about you. Don't worry. And so these dreams kept happening and they kept coming. And, we went into ceremonies about it and, discussed it as the American Indian Movement Grand Governing Council out of Minneapolis. And through all of that, this prayer came forward, this prayer that was to be carried from Minneapolis, Minnesota to Washington, D.C. And it's been challenging in its own way because we've had to sacrifice a lot of our time and our energy and our work. But until Leonard is free, none of us are free. He holds a piece for all of us. Part of that spirit of all of our people is in that prison cell with him in Coleman, Florida right now. So the walk is going to start this fall, actually here just in a couple of weeks in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We're going to have an opening rally at Cedar Field, just right next to Little Earth, on August the 31st. The orientation for the walkers will start at 3 p.m. that day, and then the rally will start at 5 p.m. And we're going to have drum group, prayer, speakers, and then a musical performance at the end by Mitch Walking Elk and Robbie Romero. And then the next following day on September the 1st, we'll have a sunrise ceremony that'll be run by Mitch Walking Elk at the same location at Cedar Field, and then the walk will start. The walk is going to take a little over 2.5 months to complete. It's going to span over 1,103 miles. And I really want to stress that as the American Indian Movement, Grand Governing Council, we're first and foremost a spiritual movement. And that is the same for this walk, for this prayer, for this ceremony that we're getting to begin. This whole walk is going to be grounded in prayer and ceremony throughout the entire route. And we will be having events along the way in all of our major stopping places. That includes Eau Claire, Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin, Chicago, Illinois, South Bend, Indiana, Toledo, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and into Washington, D.C. with the rally on November the 14th at the Lincoln Memorial.
Wow, that's amazing, Rachel. What I would like to do is we need to take a quick break here in a few seconds and come back and talk about that. And also, I just want to say my understanding, he's the longest serving political prisoner, not only indigenous prisoner, but political prisoner. Am I right about that?
Yes, to my understanding.
Yes, then that's what we've said many times. Hey, this is an unbelievable show. We're talking about the Walk for Justice for Leonard Peltier, the longest serving political prisoner. We'll be right back after this short break.
Stay with us.
Hey, Wendy, what are we doing for dinner after the show?
How about we go to J. Selby's on 169 Victoria Street in St. Paul? They have a delicious plant-based menu that's compassionate and environmentally sustainable.
I'm getting their spot-on vegan Big Mac, the dirty secret.
You can pick up and they deliver within a 5-mile radius, or you can call them at 651-222-3263 or visit jselbys.com.
Well, you sold me, Wen. Let's go order at J. Selby's tonight.
I'm hungry.
COVID levels may be falling, but the virus is still around. Stay healthy and up to date on your COVID vaccinations and boosters. Right now, everyone 6 months and older is eligible to get a vaccination, while everyone 5 and up is eligible for their booster shot. Plus, you're eligible for a second booster if you're over 50 or received an initial booster dose at least 4 months ago. Find a vaccination site by calling 651-304-9986 or visit vaccineconnector.mn.gov. This message brought to you by the Native American Community Clinic.
Come see the Native Roots Trading Post at the West End Market of the Minnesota State Fair. Native Roots Trading Post is Native owned and operated. Shop goods from local and national Native artists that you'll love instantly. Native Roots Trading Post is supporting Native artists this year at the Minnesota State Fair, August 25th to September 5th. Native Roots Trading Post, we support Native artists and you can too. Buy Native at the Native Roots Trading Post this year at the Minnesota State Fair.
St. Paul Public Schools wants to make sure you're ready for back to school. They're having a 2-day Indian education school supply pickup on August 25th and 26th. It takes place at the Creative Arts Secondary School located at 65 East Kellogg Boulevard in St. Paul. Plus $50 of COVID vaccine incentives will be available both days. Again, that's the Indian Education School supply pickup on Thursday, August 25th and Friday, August 26th at 65 East Kellogg Boulevard in St. Paul. Learn more by calling 612-369-9770.
Hey, Tom Harvin here, and you can catch me live every weekday from 11 to 2 following the Stephanie Miller Show right here on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Hi, this is Chad from AM 950. Snap Construction is arguably the most well-reviewed roofing, siding, window, and insulation contractor in the metro. Ryan is so excited about working with AM 950 and our listeners that he wants to help us grow.
This is Ryan, owner of Snap Construction. I was friends with Chad long before I started marketing with him. I was a bit skeptical of radio advertising before Chad convinced us to run ads. The advertising's been so successful, we want to help the station grow. We've absolutely loved working with the listeners of AM 950, and we all know how extremely important this radio station is to the community. To help AM 950 grow this summer, Snap Construction will be putting up proceeds to assist the station in marketing on social media. Snap Construction encourages you to follow, engage, share, and interact on the AM 950 social media platforms. Together, we can all work to ensure AM 950 continues to thrive and grow in our communities. We stand by our work with a lifetime craftsmanship guarantee. For a free estimate or more information on our financing, call 612-333-SNAP or check us out online.
Don't be surprised if you hear your name when you walk into St. Paul Corner Drug. Our experienced staff make getting to know you their top priority. Developing a trusting relationship with our patients is the first step in providing personalized care that achieves the best outcomes possible. Make certain all your providers know who you are and what your needs are. It is a vital step in your well-being. Stop by St. Paul Corner Drug today to start a relationship with a staff that cares. St. Paul Corner Drug, pharmacy the way it should be.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Showers and storms tonight with a low of 62, then partly sunny on Saturday with a high of 73. The Great Wall has been serving up authentic Peking and Sichuan favorites for over 40 years. The Great Wall is located on France Avenue along the Minneapolis-Edina City line. Check out their menu at greatwallrestaurant.us.
Bijou. I am Oshawashko Gijig. I'm from Red Lake Nation, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake.
This portion of the show is brought to you by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Hey, we're talking about the walk for justice for Leonard Peltier, and we have Kevin Sharp, Kathy Peltier, and Rachel Thunder on here, and we're talking about the walk right now. We gave a little backup history of what was going on, and one of the great things, we're out of the Twin Cities here. The American Indian movement started here, on Franklin Avenue, and with a lot of great people, a lot of history here. We had the opportunity to have Clyde Belcourt on our show many, many times. Uncle Clyde is no longer with us, and we're very sad about that. But it's great to see warriors like Rachel really to pick up the baton here and talk about these things that need to be talked about. And it's great to see the younger people picking up the baton. Welcome back, Rachel. And I'm wondering if we could just talk about those dates of the walk again, and then ask Kevin a few things, and Kathy too. So welcome back, you guys.
Mm-hmm. Again, the walk to justice to free Elder Leonard Peltier is starting this September the 1st in Minneapolis, Minnesota, from the heart of AIM. And we're going to be carrying that prayer to Washington, D.C. and arriving in D.C. on November the 14th. And Kevin, a little bit earlier in the show, he was talking a little bit about the what happened, but then there's the why did it happen? And I wanted to give Kevin a minute to kind of elaborate on that, and then maybe have Kathy and me jump in too.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Here, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and there's the why it happened, but there's also the why this walk is so important. When I got involved in the case, it was about the Constitution and this one man. And from my perspective as a lawyer and a member of the judiciary, it initially could have been anyone. If I saw a case like this and saw someone was set up and railroaded in this way, it would have made me angry and sad at what's happened to our justice system. But it didn't take me long to realize that this was more than about this one man. And it's for all the reasons that Kathy and Rachel have been talking about, that Leonard is a symbol for so much more than that. And that's why I think clemency, which is all of this is a push toward, is not only critical that it happened, but important for on multiple levels, not just to relieve the injustice to this one man, but to make a statement to start the healing. And you look back and say, why hasn't this happened before? Because all of this information has been known for decades. And I think a big part of that reason is there was a group of a Native American community that knew what was happening, and lived this, not just Leonard's case, but lived what was happening in the reign of terror and this level of discrimination across the country. But the rest of the country wasn't really ready to hear that. The audience wasn't receptive to it because there were so many other things going on. It was happening in a very tumultuous time. But even after that, people just weren't ready for that. And there was a constituency that did not have the influence that it has today. And Native American issues have suddenly risen to the top, and people are ready to listen. Boarding schools have shocked, although known to everyone in those communities, where the rest of the country have shocked us. Mm-hmm. That I had no idea that these things, I knew they existed, but I thought they were gone certainly before the 1900s, didn't realize that they had come, stayed in existence in some cases into the 1980s and 90s. So those kind of things shock us. The land back movement, you now see the center stage that it's taking. CNN just ran a special about this the other day. And again, it's because it's not just important and relevant to a small community in the grand scheme of things of a 300 million, citizen country. But now all of a sudden, that's an important issue for the country as a whole. The treaty violations are suddenly something that people are acknowledging happened and willing to talk about that and kind of start this healing. So Leonard is about so much more than just Leonard.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the decades that have passed to get us to this point, I thought I was someone who paid attention to these issues and I didn't know about Leonard Peltier.
Mm-hmm.
The walk then becomes really important to get the word out again, because now people are willing to listen, but they don't know the story. And
Right.
that's why this walk becomes important. And that's why having Kathy's voice and her other relatives and those relatives of Leonard becomes so important. People need to know there is a human being sitting in a maximum security prison, about to turn 78 years old, who has no business being there, and who is a symbol for so much more that has happened in this country over the last several hundred years. And that's why I continue to applaud Rachel, and thank God that I met her and we're able to work together to try and get the attention of the president and let Leonard go home.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that you mentioned, Kevin, before I hand it back over to Rachel and Kathy, is that I think one of the big things that happened was Standing Rock. And we were there during Thanksgiving weekend, and Wendy and I had been there 3 or 4 times bringing supplies. And Standing Rock was the second largest city in North Dakota at that time, because we had around 20,000 people there fighting pipelines. And I think a lot of the 7th fire, the 8th fires that they talk about went all across the country. And that's why all across Turtle Island, that's why we have this radio show. So it's been an amazing past few years here, and hopefully we can get Leonard out, because of the way people are looking at us, whether through the media, TV shows, movies, are looking at our people a little different than they did a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got an influence, the community has an influence, a political influence that is never enjoyed before, because the numbers were small, but and they still are small comparatively to the rest of the country, but it's a voice that now people are ready to listen to. And the window is open. I don't know how long this window will stay open, hopefully for a while, but you're right, Standing Rock was a catalyst to wake the rest of the country up to what had been happening for generations in this segment of the United States.
Right. And just to add on to what Kevin was saying, we named as AIM, we named this walk the Walk to Justice, because of all of these different issues that Leonard represents for our people. He represents the injustices that have been done to our people. He represents this fight, this battle, this reversal of the genocide that happened to our people for the past 530 years. He represents all of these issues that are still affecting our people today, the boarding schools and residential schools. We're looking at the Indian Child Welfare Act,
Yeah.
Potentially being revoked this fall. We're taking that with us to DC.
Right. Leonard and his sister Betty Ann were victims of the boarding schools.
Right. Yeah.
Leonard was kidnapped at 9. His sister was 6.
Mm-hmm.
They are every bit of victims of this, and that's why Pine Ridge has to be set into context, the context of the 500 years, and then these very specific traumatizing events.
Right.
You cannot understand what happened that day, and the courts have said the government needs to take responsibility for their role in Pine Ridge, but you have to understand the why, and you can't understand the why unless you understand boarding schools, and unless you understand the land back issue. Unless you understand the treaty violations, this all didn't just pop up one day and people start shooting. It happened for a reason. And I think as a country, we're willing to talk about that. And you cannot heal unless you talk about it. And you can't stop the bleeding unless you can heal the wound. And we can't heal the wound unless there are things like the Walk to Justice where people pay attention and start talking about what happened.
Rachel, I'm wondering if Kathy, how often do you talk to your father and how is his spirits? Because I know, we talk around Leonard because we're not experts, but we know the injustices have been happening for all these years, and we do talk about it on our show. But I can't imagine how he's feeling and how you're feeling as a daughter.
Well, to first answer, I haven't seen my dad in over 2 years, and before that was 20 years. And the reason for that gap is because of them moving him around. At that time, it was from when Leavenworth was for the military and a max security, and then they decided to move him to Pennsylvania, and it was back and forth to Coleman, Pennsylvania. I don't know what prison it was there, and it just that was a 20-year gap for me even seeing him. I didn't see him. I got to see him about maybe 2 years ago before the whole COVID. And growing up with my brothers and sisters, seeing him on holidays was like very emotional.
Yes. Totally. What Kevin said earlier and Rachel said earlier, it's we need to see family members and how this is a person that
This
we're
is
talking
a mourning of a loss of a person. It's terribly sad, and we're very sad to hear. We could feel your pain, Kathy. It's coming across. So, we pray for you that justice will be done and healing in your heart will happen
soon. Yeah.
One of the things when I've sentenced people, I've sentenced individuals to lengthy prison terms, but I always understood you're not just sentencing the person standing in front of you. You're sentencing parents and children and friends, and all the loved ones are getting sentenced. And so it becomes very important. It is the toughest thing that someone who cares about the courts has to do. And that's part of it. And COVID has been incredibly tough on Leonard because they stay in lockdown. They stay isolated. Essentially, he's in solitary.
Why don't we have one last break here? We're talking about the Walk to Justice for Leonard Peltier, the longest serving political prisoner in the United States. We're here with Kevin Sharp, Kathy Peltier, and Rachel Thunder. We'll be right back after this short break.
Please stay with us. Hey, Olgama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
The Senior Linkage Line is a free statewide service of the Minnesota Board on Aging in partnership with Trellis. I have volunteered with seniors nearly 15 years, working alongside their compassionate team. I am honored to partner with Trellis as we help our elders find housing, compare costs of Medicare prescriptions, and learn how to avoid fraud and scams targeting seniors. We help our elders optimize well-being as they age, and we can help you too. Reach out today at trellisconnects.org.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
Minnesotans age 65 plus might qualify for Health Partners Minnesota Senior Health Options. The plan includes personal support, coverage for medical, prescription drugs, and dental, plus over 30 extra benefits. Eligibility information is available at healthpartners.com/oneplan. Health Partners is a health plan that contracts with both Medicare and the Minnesota Medical Assistance Medicaid program to provide benefits of both programs to enrollees. Enrollment in Health Partners depends on contract renewal.
Hi, I'm Jane Fonda, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is brought to you by Howling for Wolves, protecting wolves for future generations.
We usually have a more robust howl, Wendy, but this is a somber day.
Mm-hmm.
And Wendy and I were talking during the break. We do listen to our commercials, sponsors. We just wanted to let you know that. We were talking during our break. What else, Kevin and Rachel and Kathy, can our listeners out there do to help free Leonard Peltier?
Well, I think the most important thing they can do. Oh, sorry, Rachel. Go ahead.
No, no, you go ahead.
The most important thing they can do. This is about influence with the president, right? Because we're at the point where this is a presidential clemency, right? I don't think he's going to pardon him, but he will commute the sentence to time served. And so the president needs to know that those people, the voters out there, care about this. You need to write to the White House. You need to email the White House, call the White House. They actually, on certain days, will answer the phone. You'll get a real person who will take down your message. You've got to let the president know that you care about this issue and that Leonard needs to be free.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, it's interesting too. I had the radio show live during the presidential forum, this past presidential election, and had an opportunity to ask every candidate that was there questions. And all I said to each one of them was Leonard Peltier's name. And it was interesting who knew about Leonard and who didn't know about Leonard. And it's great that you guys are amplifying his name in a good way and that we're talking about him today. We only have a few minutes left here, and Rachel, I really appreciate you reaching out, and this has been probably, Wendy and I, again, during the commercials we're talking, this is probably one of the best shows we've had in a long time. Tell us more what we can do, and tell us a little bit more about the walk. And Kathy, I really want to say we really appreciate you being here. This is hard to hear. I can't imagine how hard it is to talk about your father.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you so much, Kathy, for being here. And I want to give you a minute to speak too before we close. For the walk, if there's any information that you want to keep up to date with the walk, information on how to donate, that's physical donations and monetary donations. We have a Facebook page that is Leonard Peltier's Walk to Justice. And if you don't have a Facebook, that's okay too. You can email us at leonardpeltierwalktojustice@gmail.com. You can also reach out to me or anybody else that's on the American Indian Movement Grand Governing Council, and we'd be happy to answer any questions and work with any and all of you. So I want to give Kathy some time. Go ahead, Kathy.
Well, I just want to say, after saying that I got to see my dad 2 years ago, 2 years ago, he was saying that that at that point he was thinking that his support has died. And so I wanted to say, Rachel, thank you for doing this, because it's showing that he does have support still. And so if listeners want to write him, you should write him, because then he'll know that he still has support out for him.
Wow.
For those of you who do that, if you're going to write to him, go to the Coleman website on BOP. They have very specific requirements for letters in order to get through to a prisoner. So take a look at that website. Make sure you follow their rules.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say that one more time, Kevin?
Yeah, so any letter can't get through. They have specific requirements about the color of the envelope, what's written on it, no smells, no perfume, and it's all on the website. So Leonard is at Coleman 1. There's a federal correctional complex in Coleman, Florida, but he's at Coleman 1, and on the website it'll tell you specifically how you get mail to a prisoner. You got to follow that or they will toss it. The BOP is tough about things like that.
Totally understand. And I want Kathy to look this, and I want to re-amplify what Rachel said is your people are coming for you. And that's all that we can feel in our heart, and reach out to Leonard, talk about Leonard, put your free Leonard t-shirts on again. And that's
Yes. And again, if you want to keep up with the walk, we'll be posting daily updates on that Facebook page. That's Leonard Peltier's Walk to Justice. And come join us at any point on the walk. Come walk for a day. Come walk for a week. Come walk for a month, but bring 2 pairs of shoes. And we will be having rallies at all of those locations that we mentioned. Those dates are all on the Facebook page, and we can also email them to you. And at our opening rally in Minneapolis on August the 31st, we welcome all of our Indigenous organizations and businesses to come set up a booth. So, Robert, I hope to see you there with a booth. And I just want to say blessings and thank you to everybody who's listening, and free Leonard Peltier.
absolutely. And we still have a couple more minutes, and I would like to just throw it out who would like to speak, because I think this has been a powerful show because we're speaking from our heart. And Kevin Peenigigi, that means thank you, and Ho Chunk for doing this work and looking at this injustice and being what we call is a person that helps us. You are we're small, and we need all our white people, our white allies to help us. So I really want to say, Peenigi, thank you so much for that.
Robert, that actually brings up.
Thank you. It's the right thing to do.
About even though our numbers are small, we are influential. And Kevin, you're so good at wording that with the elections that I wondered if you could get into that really quick.
Well, I tell you that the president needs to be thinking about this, right? Because when you look, if just the politics of it, let's just look at Indian country, right? You don't win the presidential election without winning Michigan or Wisconsin or Arizona, and you don't win those if the Native American vote does not turn out. If they don't show, you don't win. And the worst thing that could happen, not to get too crass with this, Kathy and I apologize, but if Leonard dies in prison, he didn't die on Clinton's watch, who didn't grant clemency. He didn't die on Obama's watch, who didn't grant clemency. He would die on Biden's watch. And if you want to win elections, you cannot let that happen. The other thing, you mentioned this, that you were asking about the presidential forum, and some of the candidates hadn't heard of Leonard. There's a reporter with the Huffington Post, Jennifer Bendry, who asked members of the Senate Indian Affairs Committee about Leonard, and they hadn't heard of him. So, once you do, though, once you hear the story, those members are now supporters of Leonard. Senator Schatz and Senator Hirono out of Hawaii, Senator Leahy, Senator Bernie Sanders, they are all supporters of Leonard. People just need to hear the story. Again, that's why the walk is so important, but why people can also contact their members of the House and Senate and their support of Leonard with the White House and in front of DOJ becomes critical.
Exactly. We're down to a minute here, and I just want to just to amplify what you said, Kevin, is I'm here in Minnesota. We had 1,000 brand new voters vote up in the deep north, we call it, and that, and we did some elections around. So that's a really great point, and we rock more Native style here on Native Roots Radio. Thank you so much. I don't know. Thank you so much Kathy Peltier, Kevin Sharp, and Rachel Thunder. Thank you so much for being on our show today. Amplify. Rachel, I hope to get some updates from you during the walk, too.
Yeah, of course. All in from the walk.
Right on.
Thank y'all for having us on. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to join Kathy and Rachel to talk about this. It's an important topic, and we can't let it die down.
Exactly. P&E, we'll be back next week.
Have a good weekend. Free Leonard Peltier.
Hi, I'm Scott Shamblot from Shamblot Family Dentistry. We're the fear-free, shame-free dental office.